Plague Tale Requiem tells one of the best stories I've ever experienced in a game. But I have a confession to make. I didn't like Innocence, its prequel. And because of that, I largely missed out on what is now one of my favorite game series of all time, full stop. Because for all the improvements that Requiem made over its predecessor, what makes this game and series so damn special isn't the combat or spectacular visuals, but the intangible sense of hope, dread, and fire that it lights in your soul. This is a game many people won't experience, but one that everyone should. When I look back on the games that actually mean something to me, or more importantly, the games I can't stop thinking about, it always comes down to one thing: the story and world. Don't get me wrong, I love good gameplay, amazing visuals, and hype, but those things don't last. Better and more fun games come and go, and as I've grown older, my preferences have changed. But a memorable story, and a world that you can truly get lost in, that that never leaves you. And it's exactly what makes a Plague Tale Requiem so special. There's a moment in this game where Amicia has her back against the wall. She is crying out in pain and begging for the struggles she has been going through to finally end.
Please, how am I going to do this? Please. I can't.
Her little brother Hugo, who she loves more than anything in the world, has seemingly lost himself, and her body is starting to finally give out. And it's in this moment that we see who Amicia really is, the pain she has dealt with, and the courage she has to get back up and fight again. I think it perfectly exemplifies what makes Requiem so great. More than most games, Plague Tale is solely focused on its characters. There is a broader narrative, and a damn cool one at that, but none of it really matters in the end. Because this is a story about a sister and her little brother, and her journey to protect him at all costs, against, really, himself. You see, little Hugo has a problem, a big one. Everywhere he goes, he brings an army of man-eating and ferocious rats with him. He's infected with something called the macula, that every couple of hundreds of years reemerges and forces the world into a deadly Armageddon. It's actually one of my favorite fantasy stories of all time, probably because it reminds me more of a sci-fi epic like Mass Effect more than any Knights in Shining Armor roleplays I've experienced in my life. But once again, that's not the point. Amicia and Hugo are. In the beginning of the game, we join them and their mother as they venture to a massive and sprawling city called Provence, after fleeing their home of Guyenne. It's here that there is a famed alchemist from the Order who is said to be able to help Hugo, but just as they arrive, all hell breaks loose. Rats level the city in an instant, and the townsfolk are decimated, leaving nothing but death and ruin. And so begins the journey of Amicia and Hugo as they must find another way to save Hugo from his damnation. What struck me most about this opener, though, was Hugo, and how he cared so much for Amicia, and vice versa. More than most games I've played, Requiem really sells this fraternal relationship so well. There are moments in the beginning where we simply see Hugo making friends with the locals and playing make-believe games of war, foreshadowing of the future. And we see how Amicia is just happy to have Hugo finally be at ease. But these strands of brevity last for but a moment and are followed by horrific scenes trudging through the feces of animals and humans alike, all while being chased by hordes of hellish spawn.
No! No.
Throughout it all, though, that bond between Amicia and Hugo only grows stronger. Each and every single thing we do as we play as Amicia is for Hugo. It's true and utter unconditional love, and you can feel it in your core. No matter how scared Amicia is, or how much she wants to give up, she always presses on because she knows her little brother deserves more. Like when Hugo is being carried out of Provence barely alive, crying, wondering if everything has happened because of him, but Amicia assures him that it's not his fault and that they're going to figure it out.
What's going on?
is he?
Nothing. Go back to sleep.
Or when Amicia leaves her mother behind to make sure she is safe, but also to make sure her and Hugo can find this mystical island he's seeing in his dreams against their mother's word. It's the ultimate acts of selflessness that make this relationship so powerful, but the power is only exacerbated by the fact that these strong emotions cause pain as well. Throughout the game, we watch as Amicia seemingly begins to lose her mind. After seeing so many soldiers try to kill her and her family, she begins to act out in fits of rage, killing everything in front of her in bloodthirsty blackouts akin to Kratos in God of War, Doom Guy from Doom, or your mom at my place last night. Seeing a young and naive girl who's been forced through so much horrific pain become the very monster she is trying to fight against is so powerful. And watching as the innocence in Hugo's eyes and his calming voice relieves her from her stupor shows just how meaningful he is to her. These ebbs and flows is what makes the story of Requiem so compelling. In the pursuit of simply trying to give Hugo the life he deserves, Amicia is allowing him to stay alive and potentially kill thousands, if not millions, of innocent people because of him being infected by the macula. In that pursuit herself, Amicia is killing dozens and becoming a violent psychopath that is hell-bent on one goal. But these harsh realities and strong emotions are what define the very structure of this game, and it's what makes the later moments with Hugo one of a kind. At one point halfway through the game, Amicia is in trouble, and it looks like she finally might be taken down by a drove of guards. And it's in this moment that the nice and innocent boy Hugo releases the monster inside of him, and summons an army of rats to devour any and everything in Amicia's path. Hugo has seen the anger and vitriol inside Amicia's heart, and it's beginning to rub off on him too. And this struggle forces Amicia to become better, if not for anything but the sake of her own brother's purity. And so this constant struggle defines the growth of these two characters throughout the story, as they both fight off not only the demons around them, but more importantly, the demons that are starting to grow inside of them too. In a lot of ways, the macula is nothing more than an analogy to the entire journey these two characters go on. And the cherry on top is the gameplay fits this narrative to a T. The more and more we play, the more powerful Amicia and Hugo become, unlocking countless abilities to allow for quick kills and intense violence. But throughout it all, there's always the option to sneak as well, and hide in the shadows, forgoing the easy option of simply taking out each and every guard in an instant. It's the exact struggle the two siblings are going through on their journey as well, and it's a prime example of what makes a game's narrative more powerful than any traditionally static media, like movies and books. Because while games can light our imagination just like the latter, they also have the propensity to create gameplay and moments that tie directly into our own actions in a narrative like Plague Tale. It felt like every moment I was playing this game, it had a purpose. I love that the areas were large and expansive, but not open world. It meant that each zone didn't overstay its welcome, but allowed us to explore and learn more about the universe it was housed in. Like when we're making our way up to an ancient temple inside a mountain, and we can take the time to stop and help a stranded goat on the side of the road, and in the process, help Hugo overcome his fear of the majestic beast.
I'll go with you.
You've done the difficult part. Don't startle her and it'll be just fine.
What if she screams?
Screaming's not biting. Just say to yourself, it can happen, and that's all.
I'll try.
See? It's easy. They don't all scream.
Yes. She's nice.
There's so many times in this game that I simply stop to take in not only the beauty of the world around me, but also the beauty of the relationship we were forming between Amicia and Hugo. And the thing is, when we have such powerful characters and amazing voice acting and writing on top of it, almost anything they do becomes interesting. In most games, the slower moments like helping this goat would simply get stale and I'd grow bored quickly. But in Requiem, these moments are the game. Because only by seeing the innocence of Hugo in these earlier chapters does the actions he takes later become so impactful. Towards the end of the story, Amicia and Hugo seem to have finally gotten away from the troubles they are facing and are once again on a search for a cure for Hugo, back to square one. But just as things have settled, their ship is attacked, Amicia is presumably killed, and Hugo is kidnapped. Now trapped inside the massive hub city of Marseille, thinking his sister has just been murdered, Hugo does the unthinkable and becomes one with the macula, destroying the city in an instant and unleashing an army of hellish demons into the world. Amicia then washes up on shore to find her brother unleashing this horror, and must fight her way through the city to enter the new realm of Hugo himself. And it's here that the devastating end to this game comes to a crescendo. Now trapped within the essence of the macula itself, the only way to stop the destruction of the world is to destroy the thing Amicia holds most dear, her little brother Hugo. The game's music and visuals come to a crawl, and the scene simply sits still, only pressing forth when we as the player actually don our controller and pull the trigger on little Hugo. It's such a powerful moment, and once again shows why Plague Tale's story and characters are so great, and why it could only be done this way in a game. Forcing the player to actually commit this murder themselves puts the horrors of it all into perspective. It isn't a pre-played cutscene where we simply get to sit back and watch, but rather, the event comes as a direct result of our inputs on a controller or keyboard. And what a lot of players don't know is that if we don't pull the trigger at all, eventually Lucas will, thus taking the burden upon himself instead. Either of these horrific actions, though, is a direct result of the player's actions, your actions. And because of all the buildup of seeing how innocent Hugo was before, and how much Amicia cares for him, it becomes one of the most powerful scenes and stories I've ever experienced in a game. The story of Amicia and Hugo is one of pain, if you didn't already catch on to that. But from pain, beauty is born, the type that can affect who we are. After all, isn't that what stories are all about? Telling us the adventures of not only fictitious characters and their expeditions, but of mirroring our own, evoking a sense of wonder and introspection that we crave in our real world as well. The reason I love Plague Tale Requiem is because it tells a story that's hard to tell, one that doesn't have a happy ending, but is all the more powerful because of it. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of The Last of Us Part 2. It's a divisive ending and story that was told, but the fact that it can anger and upset so many people is probably the best indication it actually took risks and stirred genuine emotion in its participants. Something most stories could only dream of doing. Plague Tale Requiem is the kind of story that makes you appreciate the people in your own life more, and realize the value that life itself has and the effect you can have on the world and others. It's a type of story that most people struggle to experience, but the type that everyone should. This game is absolutely fantastic. From the breathtaking visuals in every chapter, to the heart-pounding soundtrack, to the gameplay that is finally fun to actually play in this series. But as I've stressed throughout this entire video, I'm not going to remember this game because of that. I'll remember this game because of the journey it took me on in my own soul, and the haunting spell it could surely give to others as well. Requiem is the reason I love making videos about video games right here on this channel, because of the power they can have and the emotions they can uniquely evoke. Humans are a social species, and because of that, we crave the intimacy of a good story and characters who really mean something. And if you're looking for something that can light that fire in your soul, then look no further than a Plague Tale Requiem. A game in a genre I hate, in a time period I find mind-numbingly boring in most cases, that somehow captured my attention and imagination like so few have. In 2022, the two games that will be in discussions for Game of the Year are Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok. Both fantastic experiences in their own right. But the third game that should be in these discussions, that instead everyone will forget and ignore, is this one, a Plague Tale Requiem. So if you're like me and gave up on the first game, at least don't rob yourself of the extraordinary experience of this one. And as always, thanks for watching.